So good afternoon, everybody. I'm happy to see all of you here today. My name is Allan Gregersen. I'm one of the two founders of Javeleon. I'm going to present dynamic class reloading in the wild with Javeleon. So I'm going to show you some exciting stuff today. And with me today I have René from a company called Javeleon in Austria, and Christian from the NetBeans team from Oracle. And the way we'll do this presentation is that I'll be presenting the core capabilities of Javeleon and show you some quick demos of a sample Java SE application and some Java EE stuff at the very end. Then René will actually talk about his usage of Javeleon, and he will present himself more formally in his talk. So, just to give you a brief background information here is on what we are actually talking about. You do have some limited form of hot swapping capabilities built into the Java language or the JVM called the HotSwap, and you probably all know about this. So it's basically you have this class with codes in it, and you have your IDE running a debugging session. Then the developer changes some code and wants to apply this code, and he simply can apply the HotSwap, and it will be right into the running JVM. The problem with this is that it's really limited. You can only support changes to method bodies. And I think that we really need to support full class reloading in order to preserve the code quality in your production code. Because any limitation that you put into a class reloading system will actually in some way affect your code quality, because those restrictions you will try to work around them because you don't want to restart your applications. So if you have some capabilities to actually reload changes into your system, you will actually try to overcome these workarounds or these restrictions, build in small workarounds that could actually produce less quality code. So what we really do need is a full capable reloading system, and that's exactly where Javeleon comes into the picture. So before I dig into the capabilities and show the core features, I would actually be showing you a demo of a Space Invaders game built on the NetBeans platform by an Italian student about just over a year ago. So what we do have here is a very boring Space Invaders game, and I wouldn't even call it a game, this version. So I have 5 revisions of this game built into a local repository, and I'm going to apply updates to this system while I'm playing it, so you can see the capabilities of dynamic updating with Javeleon. So the first thing that I would like to add is like some movement to the aliens and to the red boxes, right? So let's just switch to the next revision. Yep. And to apply the update in NetBeans, you have to just press reload entire platform, and the update will be applied in the running system. So now I can actually play. You cannot shoot the barriers, and that's probably a bug, so we need to fix it. And if I could just die, that's really hard in this game. You would actually be able to see that it just says, oh no, they got you, try again, press any key. So there's no scoring system, so why don't we just add that to the game? It's also got a pause feature now. I'll just switch and then unpause it again when we're ready. Yeah, so just one more package coming into the code here. And I will just unpause it again before we apply the update. And it doesn't look like much have changed, right? But now you can actually shoot these barriers. And you will see that we actually got a score now, so we have a small high score added to the system. But we need really to do something about the graphics, right? Because users will not be very happy about this graphics. So let's add some more advanced stuff to the system, and a lot of code is coming in here in this revision. So let's just unpause so you can see that we're actually applying the update while it's being played. And the graphics should actually change now. So now we can sort of, it's improved, right? It's still not perfect. So let's just add some more real looking animated explosions, and while we're at it, why don't we just add a laser beaming spaceship mother spaceship. So let's do that. It's the last update. Okay, I think I'll just wait a minute to die so you can actually see the update. There you go. So now you can actually, you have much nicer animated explosions. You have this really dangerous spaceship that is, yeah. So you get the idea, right? So now we actually have a fully functional Space Invaders game. So that was pretty cool. So let's switch back to the real capabilities, because this is not actually a typical usage scenario of Javeleon. This is applying real-world live updating, right? Javeleon is also very beneficial for development usage, so you can just test small incremental changes while you're coding. And that's really where the big benefits are, in my opinion. So with Javeleon, you could actually, if you have this class, you can add some fields, you can remove fields, you can add or change constructors, methods, you can add new methods, you can even implement new interfaces at runtime, and you can actually also extend new classes, so change the superclass. So those are pretty unique features, one of them. So basically you can simply change Java classes at runtime, no restrictions. And we have some unique features. We have the automatic field initialization of new fields that I'll show you in just a minute. It's a very convenient feature. As said, we can replace superclasses and change the implemented interfaces. And we have two different operation modes. You can either choose to reload on file change or compiling, or you can trigger the reload manually for Java SE and EE projects. So let's just show a small demo. So here I have a very, very small application running. You can add some students to the system and you can get some information about the students. So now I have Alan added. So I want to perform some changes to the student. I want to add an ID field to students. So why don't we do that? And while we add it, we want to retrieve the ID from some global place. Here is just a static field. Like a student counter, and let's start the counter at 32, for instance. And I want to just increment this guy. So every time a new student is created, it will be incremented automatically, right? And just let us print out this new ID thing. So that should work, right? So I'm saving the file, and if I select Alan here, you can see the new ID showing up, and it's 32. So it's automatically applied. So I'm thinking that you actually think, how the hell did that get initialized? I mean, the object was already created, and we just added a new field, and we're not like rerunning the constructor, right? That would be stupid, because it would actually overwrite the existing fields. So how did we do that? We actually pick up class level initialization. So whatever you write up here outside the constructor, it will be merged into every constructor. We're able to pick up that piece of bytecode to actually initialize those specific fields that are new to this object. So that's a pretty convenient feature. So why don't we just create a new interface and try and implement that. Let's add a printable with just one method. Whoops. Called print. There we go. And make the student implement this. If I can type. There you go. And just implement the method. return. What do we return? We can return print, so you can see that it actually printed from here, and we just delegate it to string for now. So this will actually not show up now, so let's use it from the main window here. Well, we have a list up here of students, so there's students in it, right? Whenever we select something from the list, there's a student expected to be there. But now we actually just need to know it's a printable. Right, and we save it. And it should not print something yet because we're just stringing it. So we will just use the print method now because it should be printable, right? So now it just showed up, so we changed the implemented interface for this existing object, and it just simply worked, right? So we could do some more advanced stuff like changing the superclass if we would like to add like other kinds of persons into the system. The first thing you would do actually would be to create a superclass and then extract something from the subclass, the reusable parts, right? So let's add a new person superclass. And you would want to add the name, or actually move the name up into the superclass. Yeah. And you would also need to move the getter up into the superclass. You would need to write a constructor initializing the name field. So now we actually have an existing field value for this student, which is Alan here, and we want to make sure that it can actually print the same stuff as expected. So we would like to actually preserve the state of this object even though we actually moved the field upwards into the hierarchy. So there we go. I think that should be enough, right? So there we go. So let's see if that's going to work. So still we have Alan, and no problem in actually retrieving that field even though we just moved it upwards into the hierarchy. So that was it for the first bunch of demos. So who can actually use Javeleon? Well, you can use it for Java SE developers. You can use it on the NetBeans platform, as we will see two very good examples of right in a minute. And the new 3.0 release that actually came out this week can actually also do class reloading on Java EE and on Tomcat, Jetty, and JBoss. We have some Spring Model View Controller, Bean validation, REST-EC, and some more support for EE stuff that I will give you a small demo of at the very end of this session. So for now, I will just switch to René, and he will present himself and give you some cool insights to what he's been doing with Javeleon.
Wow, what a great presentation. Yeah, hello everyone, my name is René Jan, and I will try to tell you the power of Javeleon from my point of view as user and as a customer. But firstly, let me introduce myself. I'm co-founder and currently head of research of development at SAP Visions. We are a software company in Austria. We develop products, software products, and our focus is on the creation of custom backend software. We also actively develop and maintain the open source application framework with the name JRebel. Has anyone heard of it? It's really great. One? No? Well, you should look at it if you develop backend database applications. The goal of JVX is the creation of backend database applications with less source code in a shorter time. We use this product, or this open source framework, for all our products and all customers that need a backend application. But that's not all, because we use the framework. It's the base of our product with the name Vision X. It's a modern application builder with a visual UI designer, automatic persistence handling, and much more. It enables you to develop or create backend applications without coding, but you as developer have the full control over the source code. Otherwise, no developer would use this tool. I will use this tool for my demos a little bit later. So, let's start with my first question. Why dynamic class reloading? Well, for me and my team, it's very important to develop fast and create high-quality software. And of course, we don't want to be code monkeys. Of course, we have to meet our deadlines and to make our customers happy. But we also want to have fun and have time for researching new projects. On the one side, we develop a product that helps other developers to save valuable time and increase their productivity. On the other side, we are not as fast as our customers. There's something wrong, isn't there? Maybe. To save development time and increase our productivity, sorry, we brainstormed to find out what we could improve. We knew that it was not possible to reduce the complexity or save development time for complex problems, for some business logic, or for algorithms. But we found some points that we could improve. Our first goal was to reduce application restarts. Not only the startup time, but also the login process, open screens, menu navigation, and so on. If you modify only one specific screen from a whole application, why should you restart the whole application after every code change? This is boring, isn't it? Our next idea we had was about the reduction of manual UI tests. Imagine you have a simple application screen with one grid, a detail form, and some buttons. With the buttons, you start a workflow or create a report. But for example, the report needs the selected record from your grid. Now imagine you are developing the report and must test the integration with your screen. Isn't it annoying to start the application, to open the right screen, and to select the test record to check if a simple code change works? Okay. So, going back to our last goals, we asked ourselves, what does a developer really want? A developer wants to be able to see all code changes immediately in the application, and the same should be possible for source files and config file changes. So, one moment. We tried to find a library or tool that fits our needs. And some hours later, I'm not kidding you, we received an article via RSS about Javeleon on tzone. We thought it was a try, why not? Of course, we found some other tools, but Javeleon interested us more because it was a research project from the University of Southern Denmark, which is always a good thing. It supports all relevant features like replacing superclasses, adding and removing fields, implementing interfaces, and moving fields between super and subclasses. And it is easy to use because you have only one jar file and absolutely no runtime dependencies. The integration in our development process was straightforward. No complex configuration, just copy and paste. Another important thing for us was that Javeleon works without IDE plugins. It has no user interface and does not need user interaction. And another great plus was the really great support from the development team. You don't know the quality of a development team until you need some help. We found some small problems, and the support from the development team was fast and consistent. They solved our problems and understood all of them. Yeah. Now you know why we love using Javeleon. The next question is, how do we use Javeleon? First, we prefer Eclipse as our IDE, and so it was important that Javeleon works with it. We only use a simple jar file, the Javeleon jar file, integrate it in our launch configuration, and that's it. No class bus changes. In my company, we have different development teams for open source, customer projects, and product development. Every team uses Javeleon. As a rule, we don't release Javeleon with our products or projects. We only use it as development library. And Javeleon especially helps us for live layouting and live coding. Normally, in our development process, we start an application, make some layout changes to an existing screen or create a new one, and make some changes to business logic. And really all changes are immediately available in the application. It's really, really great. The only problem is that we are used to close the application after a test. So the biggest challenge for us was, don't close the application, never press X. Yeah. After so much information, I think it's time for a short demonstration of Javeleon. I will show you the integration of Javeleon into an existing application, the modification of an existing screen, and some business logic modifications. But before you can use Javeleon, you must download it from javeleon.org. It's really .com. It's really simple. You'll receive a single zip archive with Javeleon in it. Unzip the archive anywhere on your hard disk and remember the directory. I already did the download or have downloaded it, so I can continue with my configuration. As I told you before, I prefer Eclipse as my IDE, but the configuration should be possible with all other IDEs or even the command line. So now let's switch over to Eclipse. Good. The first thing, I want to show you my existing application as we used it before we used Eclipse, Javeleon. Oh, not the application, the configuration. So, I have different ones. Okay, as you can see, I have a simple Swing application, a main class, some arguments. This application does not use Javeleon and does not support live layouting, live coding. Now I'm going to configure Javeleon. It's really simple. I've configured it. And the only difference is the same main class, same arguments. I added 2 additional parameters to the virtual machine arguments. The first is the boot class path. It points to a directory, a temporary directory anywhere on your hard disk, and the Java agent. This sets the Javeleon jar file, the full qualified path to it. Okay, let's run and modify some source code. Startup. Okay, this is Vision X, my company flagship. It has a menu bar on top of the frame, a nice looking toolbar, a desktop in the middle of the frame. The desktop shows all available applications. We can start applications, we can create new ones, and have a lot of different options in this application. But now we want to change source code of an existing screen. I use the user management. It's a simple screen. It has a list of application users on the left, a form with some details, and a list of roles for each selected user. Our first modification affects the user interface, this one. I'll replace the header title, user management, with another one, another text, set a new title or text for the email, and remove phone and fax from the user interface. Okay, let's do it. A moment. So, back to my source code. The source code is more or less a simple panel. We use layouts, we use text fields, tables, and so on. Okay, I have a method to set the header title. Welcome to Java 1. The next change is set the email label to a different value. And now remove phone and fax. Okay, save. Or not. Yes, and as you can see in the application, nothing happened. Surprise. No, not really surprised. Javeleon already reloaded the classes, but nobody told my application that something has changed. We must reopen the screen manually to see the changes. One moment. Reopen it. And now it's up to date. A new email text, new header, and so on. This is not really as cool as it should be, but be patient, it gets better. Our next modification affects the business logic. I have a simple email check. When I remove the ad and press finish, I get an exception, the email is wrong. But I don't like this text, or the text is wrong. So let's go to the source code for my business logic. Anywhere in my business logic, I have a doCheck email method, and this method throws a simple exception. I will change the text, go back to the application, press finish, and now I have the new text. Why now, immediately? Because the user interface is not affected. In this case, everything works because it's not visible. It's the business logic. Okay, this was our first experiment. But now, I think it's time to update the user interface immediately, because we won't reopen the whole screen once and once again. Good. To do this, one moment, I must switch back. To do this, we use another feature of Javeleon. It's the reload listener. If you configure such a reload listener, you will receive an event after every reload of Javeleon. You can use this event to update your user interface or whatever, or reset caches. The reload listener is a simple swing change listener interface because it's available in any Java virtual machine, and you don't have a dependency to your application for Javeleon. Okay, and now I will show you the previous example, but with a reload listener. Go back to Eclipse. I have pre-configured the launcher and show you what happened. The only difference to the previous launch configuration is that I now set the system property javeleon.reload.listener to the implementation of my listener, the full qualified class. Let's run it. Open the same screen again. Okay. And now let's revert the previous UI changes. Add the phone and fax, the old label for the email, and the old title. So, and after saving, the user interface updates immediately. That's how it should work. Okay. One moment. The next feature I want to mention, before I continue, I will show you my listener implementation, because it's really simple to implement your own listener for your applications. It's a simple Java class. It implements the swing change listener. I detect the application in the constructor, and in the implemented interface method, state changed, I update my user interface. Of course, the update user interface contains a little bit more source code for my application, but it always depends on your own application, what you do. In my case, I reopen all existing screens. That's it. Another important feature for us, and maybe for you, is the support of custom class loaders. In Vision X, we use custom class loaders to load user-defined libraries at runtime and to load dynamically compiled classes at runtime. For us, it's very important that Javeleon supports these custom class loaders. But I must say that custom class loaders are not detected automatically. You as developer must register and unregister them. But Javeleon offers a sort of API, but it's a little bit magic, and Alan will explain the details to you.
Yep. Yeah, so we have this Javeleon API that's not really an API, because we had different options to go with here. As Rene told you, he don't like actually to have a dependency on Javeleon. So we came up with this crazy idea that, he shouldn't have a dependency on Javeleon. We would like type-safe API-like features so that he can actually hook into our real API at runtime if Javeleon is enabled. And if it's not enabled, the code should do nothing. Okay? So that was the design criteria. So we now have an API-like structure where you have no dependencies to Javeleon, and there's no difference between runtime and development mode. So, and it supports custom class load registration. So the simple idea is that you simply paste this piece of code into some package somewhere, and the only requirement is that it needs to be called Javeleon Reload Manager. Then you implement this interface at the bottom, class loader listener, which should just provide one new fresh class loader instance when you need to reload the classes within those class loaders. So basically you now have global static access to the Javeleon API by invoking register and unregister methods that will do nothing if Javeleon is not enabled. So we actually hook in at load time and fill out the blanks in those methods to actually invoke directly into our internal API. Yeah, and I think that explains the basic idea, and Renee will just show you how they actually implemented this stuff.
Yeah. Good. I have two additional slides that shows my usage of registration for Javeleon custom class loaders. The first one is the original class usage without support for Javeleon. It's relatively simple. Anywhere in our source code we had an init method, and we created our custom class loader with the name direct class loader, added set the parent class loader in the constructor, and our class loader needed a connection to remote classes remotely. That's it. Now, the support with Javeleon, the initialization is nearby the same. It's moved to the class loader listener, as Alan told you, and the two main differences are that the listener is created through the create module class listener method, and the class loader is registered together with the listener. And every time when Javeleon reloads, the listener method will be called. Yeah. Okay, and the last feature I want to mention is, or Alan told you, that Javeleon has two modes: automatic reloading and manual reloading. Automatic reloading, everything works. But I should tell you that Javeleon reloads when you change, or automatically reloads when you change a source file or a class file. But it does not reload when you change a resource file, like an image or a properties file or a PNG. If you want to reload your application whenever you change a resource file, you must turn off automatic reloading at the moment. Maybe it's a good issue for a feature request. Mm-hmm. To do this, you can configure an additional parameter. It's the port option to the Javeleon launch settings. And when you do this, Javeleon completely disables automatic reloading. To trigger reloads, you must use a web browser and send a specific request to Javeleon. It's HTTP localhost port/reload. With this event, Javeleon triggers reload. But it's not very convenient to use a web browser because we have modern IDEs. And I thought, okay, let's create an Eclipse plugin for this. And this plugin reloads Javeleon after you have changed a source code, a resource file, or whatever. Yeah, the project is very new. It's open source. We are looking for helping hands and maybe contribute to this new project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Renee. So as you said, this Eclipse plugin has been contributed by Renee, and it's just great that he picked this up and kind of tailored what he needed and created a small Eclipse plugin. And we'll be picking up on this Eclipse plugin and contribute to it as well. So what about Java EE? Can we do something about all those application servers and web frameworks that has a number of different things that we need to take care of when we are dealing with class reloading? So all of these web applications use a broad variety of containers and different kinds of web frameworks. And many of them tend to use a really aggressive caching for storing class metadata. And it tends to, like, when you change a class, add a new method, you will probably end up in a no such method exception or similar, just because it did not happen to be in that cache. So we need to purge those caches at runtime, and we need to integrate like if you want to add a Spring bean or something like that, we need to actually inject it into the Spring framework while we're running. So we need to pick up on all those annotations that web frameworks use and actually reflect the changes accordingly at runtime. So the bad news is that all of this actually needs quite deep and specific integration for each of these servers and each of these web frameworks. So we have started with Tomcat 6 and 7, Jetty 7 and 8, and JBoss 7.1, which now provides class reloading facilities. Then we have added support for bean validation, Spring Model View Controller, CDI, REST-easy, and some other stuff as well. But we will be integrating with a lot of different web frameworks in the coming months. So stay tuned if your favorite thing is not up here on this list. So why don't I switch to a demo? I have a very simple application running here. It's something I found on the internet, where you can just add pets to sort of like a pet store, and you can add like a new breakfast dog or whatever to Chuck Norris and save it. But you end up in a illegal value here caused by bean validation constraints, which was probably wrong, right? So we need to, it should be okay to have pets that are 30 years old. Yeah, perhaps you can have a turtle that is like 100 years, but let's just say we at 1980 now. We save the file, and oops, wow. And we go back into the browser and try to save it. And now we are just able to pick up that bean validation constraint, purge the cache, and so now it was actually picked up quite nicely. So now we also want to add something more, because now this request mapping was actually not available in the application. So let's just try to do something about that. So I could just uncomment this piece of code here and it would actually work, but that would not really show. It would show you that we picked up request mappings, but I'm really want to show you a bit more here. So why don't we just add a new controller to the project. And add the annotation. There we go. So now we can actually copy the code from the other controller and just fix the imports and stuff. There we go. So for this to work, we can see that, let's just fix the imports first. Oh, that was a NetBeans, it's like control1. Why don't I just use the UI? I never can remember when you're a NetBeans user or Eclipse user, you can never, I should just use one style of shortcuts, right? So let's add the imports. There we go. So now we just need a DAO variable, which is auto-wired. Is it called? Yeah. Like that. And add the annotation. Auto-wired, so it will be automatically injected into the running system. And save the file. And go to the browser and press refresh. So now we actually have that request mapping. We injected the controller, we auto-wired this stuff, and it just worked. Okay. So we can actually do something about EE applications now with the new 3.0 release. So now I'm going to switch to an example from Javeleon, and I think he will have about 10 minutes for this demo. Okay.
Okay, hi everybody, my name is Javeleon. The context in which I use Javeleon is the NetBeans platform, which is an application framework for creating large software on the Java desktop. And you can see what I have here is NetBeans IDE, where I'm creating the application. And on the right side of it, I have a small NetBeans platform application. And actually, everything that you see here is what you get out of the box. So a properties window, output window, this whole menu bar, the toolbar, a window system, a plugin functionality, an update mechanism, many features out of the box. So what you see here is basically what I have from the beginning. However, I've added one menu item, and it's this menu item, greet, and it says Hello San Francisco. So what's quite common is that one will be programming and making changes, and what typically happens is I've made a small change like this, and normally one needs to completely redeploy the application from scratch, which can be really painful, especially since these kinds of applications are typically very large. These are really not trivial applications. If you look at the screenshots page, you have applications from NATO, on Northrop Grumman, so in Defense Force, in banking, in really large industries where they create really large applications. So redeploying an application, especially in the case of trivial changes like this, is really painful and really slows down the development process a lot. So instead, thanks to Javeleon, what can be done is right-click on any module where a change has been made, and choose Reload and Target Platform. And then the module is reloaded into the application, and when I click on Greet, I now see my Hello World message instead of Hello San Francisco. The way this works is because part of Javeleon is a plugin for NetBeans, and in fact, unless I'm mistaken, this is how Javeleon started with NetBeans support. And I've installed this into NetBeans IDE. So I just went to plugins, and in the update center of NetBeans, you can register online repositories of plugins. So here I have a long list of these online repositories, and one of these is Javeleon. And if I choose edit, so you can see this is the URL to the online location of the NetBeans plugin for Javeleon. So once this has been selected, you can go to, once you've actually set that up, you can reload and here check for updates, and you'll find Javeleon, and then you can install it in there, and you'll find it in the install tab once you've done so. Then for the NetBeans platform applications anyway, but also for standard Java applications, what you'll have on the application level in the properties window is a Javeleon settings tab. So this project properties dialog is extensible. So the Javeleon plugin for NetBeans extends that tab for NetBeans platform applications, but also for Java, standard Java SE applications. And here you can configure exactly how you want to do things. And thus far, I've not actually needed to understand all of these different options. I've just using things exactly as they were, and I've been fine. So I can't go into much detail here because I just always take the defaults, and things are good. What then happens once you have enabled, so actually the only thing one needs to do here is go in here and enable, because by default this is disabled, so check the checkbox. And then when you deploy the application, one way you know that this is all working is that the output window will show a whole bunch of Javeleon messages. I'm not sure if I can find them, but there's messages during startup telling you that there's that Javeleon is starting up. And anyway, so once it's running, and you want to make any change, then as I showed, you right-click on the module and you choose Reload and Target Platform. One thing I would like, and that's been suggested recently, is that this would behave in a similar way to JRebel, where you simply need to save a file in order to reload it, rather than explicitly needing to go here. But on the other hand, what could also be done by the user of the plugin is to go to the options window of NetBeans IDE, and in the key map, find that reload into our platform, and here bind this to a key combination so that you don't physically have to go there, and then it essentially is the same thing. You would press your keyboard shortcut to reload the module. So what I've shown at this point is this hello world message changing, but what's even more annoying is when you're working with icons. So you can see I have here this red icon on my menu item. So now I think, okay, I don't like this red icon. Let's try the blue icon instead. And just to explain this, the NetBeans platform has, among many other interesting standards and systems, a number of systems like a Windows system, a module system. It also has an action system, by means of which you can take any action listener, so a plain old Java, standard Java action listener, and register it into the file system of the NetBeans platform application. So each NetBeans platform application has its own file system. And there is an XML format, an XML file that each module can provide, inside of which action listeners can be registered for certain GUI features. So here I can see, for example, I have an action reference menu file, which means this action listener will be registered in the file menu. And an annotation processor at compile time takes all of these annotations and turns them into XML entries and an XML file, which is contributed to the file system. So in that way, porting action listeners to the NetBeans platform is trivial, because you copy the classes in and then annotate them. So that's how that menu item, or how this action listener ended up in here. But one of the things you can define, in addition to its location in the menu bar or in the toolbar or wherever, is an icon that can be displayed. So normally you specify an icon, you don't like it, you make the change, you redeploy the application, but thanks to Javeleon, of course, we can make our change, reload the module into the application, and there I have my blue icon. So this makes a massive difference in the speed of development. And we often give NetBeans platform training courses, and one of the most painful things tends to be one of the many things, because there's a lot of things to learn in the beginning, but one of the truly painful things is the constant need to redeploy the application and the waiting for that process to be complete, especially as the application becomes larger. So in student settings, like at universities or in companies where we give training courses, we tend to use this because and increasingly so, because in earlier versions things weren't completely stable, and for unexpected reasons things would fail. So in earlier versions of Javeleon, at some point it wasn't used anymore, because the results were unreliable and it caused more confusion than it helped. But the latest release is really excellent, and you know, this is what we do in training courses. And in that sense, the NetBeans plugin for Javeleon is the most valuable NetBeans platform plugin, and the most important plugin to use, because everything else is provided in NetBeans IDE as the SDK of the platform out of the box. So once the students in the class have installed this plugin, the course begins, and they and they just learn very quickly about this ability to reload into the target platform. And so everyone that I've encountered in the NetBeans platform world, especially with the last release, has been very happy with it.
Thank you.
Thanks
for the kind words. I think I just grew a couple of inches there. So let's just sum up. So what is the road ahead? We want to add some development of core features. We need obviously more Java EE support, more framework supported, and you can sort of like help us prioritize this. If you contact us and give us a feature request for, say, Google Juice or something like that, and a lot of you guys do that, we will actually prioritize what users actually need. So you can help us a bit, and we need to add some remoting support, enabling Javeleon to actually push changes to a remote server. It gets more and more common to actually use clouds. to also develop your web applications. So we need to support that. And then we need to transplant, as Gertjan told you, it would be kind of nice to have this save and compile and reload built into the NetBeans platform as well. There are some hard things to do in this area, because Javeleon was originally designed to actually HotSwap full modules, and that's also the main benefits of using Javeleon for NetBeans platform, because you can actually change like module dependencies at runtime, setting up new class loader dependencies, stuff like that. It wouldn't be easy to do just on the save and compile of individual files.
And this is also the reason why we wouldn't use JRebel, because Javeleon is really, the NetBeans platform part of Javeleon is really aimed at NetBeans platform specific things, like reloading modules, dependencies of modules, and reloading contributions to the file system, and all these artifacts that are specific to the NetBeans platform.
Yeah, but I think it will be possible to actually do this. It's going to take a bit of work, but we will get there eventually. I guess also for now the plugin support is quite good, and a module reload is not actually slow, as you saw. It's really quick, so I don't see a big problem in this. So, yeah, well, thank you for listening, for showing up. And I want to also thank Gertjan and René for their support throughout this process. And yeah, thank you for listening. So I think we have like 5 or 7 minutes for questions, if you have any. Yeah.
Is it possible to attach Javeleon to an existing Java process? Right now in your example, you were starting a Java program and then some parameters, but it's possible that there's a Java process running, you want to replace classes or reload classes.
So you would like to have a running application without Javeleon, and then you want to attach it. That's pretty hard to do. I mean, we hook into the class loading process and actually prepare classes for being hot swapped. And once they're loaded, you cannot really change it. That's what you need Javeleon for in the first place. So, so no, you cannot do that. You need to start up with the Javeleon arguments. So, at the back. Freeform is currently not supported by the plugin. You would need to add those 2 lines to the runtime parameters. It's not hard to do. Freeform projects are harder to. Well, actually, in 7.2, if it's supported from the NetBeans team to actually hook into this executor, maybe Gertjan would know, then it actually should be supported. Like Maven-based development is supported. It actually picks up. When you start, then we add the runtime arguments. So you could try it. I would actually like to know if freeform projects are supported. So I can't really say whether they are or not. Yeah. We don't have plugins for IntelliJ, but we do have, like in our reference manual on the net, you will find very easy installation. It's like adding these 2 simple lines to your arguments. Then when you run in debugging mode, you would need to set up some filters to not go into synthetic methods because that's just annoying. But that's pretty much all you need. So it's not like you can do it in 2 minutes. Yeah.
Are you supporting the whole class loaded trees or only single class loaded while reloading?
It actually reloads all the classes loaded by that class loader, but it doesn't do that in one step. We do lazy class loading and lazy state migration from one class to another, and all the objects will be, all the classes will be reloaded eventually. Yeah.
And when that tree enables application to have the same dependency in 2 different versions, and they would like only to load one of those versions, is it possible, or will Javeleon try to swap everything?
I mean, you can't really have like 2 different class versions running. That would be.
You can in different subtrees of class loaded tree.
Yeah, you can, but that's not the purpose of Javeleon. We will actually we would actually perform updates as if it had been started from scratch, right? We cannot do more fancy stuff. We can only do what Java can do. So if you make a change, you cannot expect the program to behave according to the new class file and according to the old one. And you can't do that in Java. Then you need to specifically build your application code to actually do that. And that's possible even without Javeleon. And it has pretty much nothing to do with class reloading. Yep.
Is Javeleon able to handle singleton classes?
Singleton? Sure.
So if you reload a singleton class, it maintains the data it had previously initialized?
Exactly, yeah.
Lots of questions.
How does Javeleon interact with the standard debugging process?
It doesn't really. So the thing is that our model actually, it doesn't really need deep integration and knowledge about the debugger. It actually, if you step through code in your debugger, if you actually reload the entire class as we do and do not generate like helper classes for new methods and stuff like that, it's not as hard to actually make the debugger think that, okay, this is just a new class. And it knows about this new class, and the VM would know that this class, from the IDE, you can hook in new breakpoints and it will just simply work. So we don't need deep integration for the debugging.
So you can run it at the same time as you're using the debugger?
Sure, yeah. As long as you remember to specify the boot class path. That's the only requirement. Yeah. I couldn't hear you. Maven? Sure. There you can, at least for Maven-based NetBeans projects, but you can use it for any Java project, and Maven is no exception. You just need to hook in those runtime parameters or VM arguments, and you're ready to go. Yep.
If I'm updating more than one Java class, will it happen in a transaction to make sure all the classes are in consistent state?
It will if you use the port setting, the manually triggering. Then it will be performed in one transaction. If you use the operation mode where you save files and it reloads automatically, then it will reload in the order in which you compile files. And that can actually lead to some unresolved compilation exceptions, stuff like that. And that's why if you need to change code in a complex way, like say you have a bunch of classes that actually change and you need to change them in one transaction, you can set up this port argument and then you can trigger reloads manually, and you will make sure that this will actually be picked up at the time that you're triggering it.
If I have a model and a view,
Yeah.
I'm updating both.
Yeah.
And while I'm doing update, the user request comes in and it picks the older model and the new.
Yeah. Yeah, that could happen if you're unlucky. But if you trigger it manually, you can do that. And yeah, no problem. Yeah, I guess. No. Can you speak up, please? Google Web Toolkit? It's not supported at present, but it's on our radar. Yeah. A couple of differences. Well, we have some key features, like you can implement new interfaces, you can add new superclasses, remove superclasses, and then we have the automatic field initialization for both instance fields and static fields. So we even pick up, if you add a new static field, we will not rerun the static initializer, because I think that's really dangerous to do that. So we will actually pick up only the bytecode needed to actually initialize that particular new static field without touching anything else. So yeah, those are the most unique features, or the most differences. Okay, I think we can have like one or two questions. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that there are no limitations to class reloading. Can you give a few examples of things that will obviously not work?
Well, I mean, you saw Rene performing some changes to a constructor or a code that actually depends on being executed only once. So, and we cannot re-execute constructors, right? So during like UI development, if you add like drag and drop like a text field into the UI, it will show up in the init components. That's a pretty standard way to do it. And you won't see that change for the existing frame. For that, you would have to do something special. And we do have some object transformers that you can actually use for that. But in the NetBeans platform development, we do have specific support for Windows that will actually re-execute some of the constructor so that these UI changes will actually take effect. And that's also very beneficial, I know, for Christian and the students. Yeah. Last question. It's really hard for me to hear you, so I...
How does it work with if we add a new field on our model?
Yeah. So if you add a new field to anything, it will be picked up.
Would it be loaded into the Hibernate world, into the Hibernate model in this field?
We do have some Hibernate support, yes. I think we need more support to support any kinds of changes in Hibernate. But we have initial support for Hibernate. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Good questions.